morning, friends. Thanks for being here this morning. Let's take just a few moments to collect our breath and begin to settle into this place right now, allowing the mind and the body to quiet down and find the more subtle feelings that we are carrying. If you are joining us on Facebook or YouTube, you'll see there's a chat feature. If you're joining us on Substack, there is also a chat feature. I will not be able to necessarily, I won't be able to read your chat messaging on Substack, but I encourage you to use that feature to chat with other folks who are joining us this morning. It's always helpful to have many perspectives of whatever the thing is that we're working through. And let's take just a few breaths together this morning as we settle in to our bodies. I'm going to invite the bell, at which point we will breathe in through the nose to the bottom of the belly, softening those bellies, allowing that belly to fill. Nice, big, round, beautiful bellies. And when we exhale, exhaling out of the mouth, slowly and gently exhaling entirely. It's important that we, when taking these intentional breaths, really focus on breathing in a way that's going to facilitate the receiving and the releasing. And this is what we're learning to do with our breath. And the breath is teaching us to do this with our minds and our emotions and our understandings of life in general, to receive and to release. So I'll invite the bell. Breathing in. And release. Breathing in. And release. Receiving. And letting it all go. Let's have just a few moments of silent, still space. If you've been practicing these practices for some time, you'll, I'm sure, have had the experience of that moment that sort of the switch is flipped. Um, it often begins with a few breaths, and within a few breaths, my mind is already starting to pull and tug at me. Uh, and when I say pull and tug at me, we often think that, well, if my thoughts are doing this, that's me thinking. Um, but it's interesting how we identify with thought differently than we identify with any other bodily function. You know, so much of our feeling of belonging or sense of being and purpose is wrapped up in the way that our thoughts function. And this busyness of the mind, this is sort of a self-propelled, I don't want to say sickness, or disorder, because I don't want to necessarily give it a negative connotation. It just is what it is, but it's a self-propelled search for identity all the time. When we are wrapped up in our thoughts and we think that our thinking mind is the height of our self, our being, um, then we struggle with being in a body, and we struggle with the things that comes with being in a body, and that makes us struggle, of course, with being in a place and what comes with being in a place. And that sense of belonging um, is asking us to be. It's asking us to be in a place. It's inviting us. It's not requiring of us, but it's asking us, like, please come and sit. Please come and be. And when you find that feeling of belonging, then you feel welcomed. You feel at ease and relaxed. And in those moments, and sometimes they're few and far between, in those moments, that sense of belonging feels like a full body exhalation, like a full body sigh, like, oh. You don't even necessarily know that that's what it is, but I think you probably are familiar with the feeling I'm talking about. Maybe you haven't found it in a lot of places, but I'm sure there's been a place that you found that sense of belonging. When you're with the right group of people and you're like, wow, these are my people. I feel seen. I feel respected. I don't feel like I'm hiding or masking or any of that in this moment. That's a sense of belonging. When you live in a place that you can go without light, when you can just walk through your home in the darkness, even with your eyes closed, and not step on a thing, even if there are, you know, typewriters all taken apart and shoes and the stack of boxes of things to either come in or go out. You have this belonging and this sense of place and this knowledge of place, this deep knowledge of the place that you can maneuver even in the dark. And there comes this place in our practice where that occurs as well. This switch that sort of just goes, ah, and there you are. You drop in. First few breaths you're taking, oftentimes the sound of the heater, the concern about whether or not you've done the things you need to do. For me, it's did I lock the door of Journey Home? Did I start the coffee? Did I, it's all these little check marks. Did I do this? Did I do that? And then when it comes to the meditation, I'm constantly, did I turn the microphone on? Is the microphone on? Can people hear me right now? And oftentimes that answer is no, you did not turn the microphone on. but my point is, as I sit and I breathe into those moments and I start to feel that sensation that arises from my body responding to those thoughts. Is the fan too loud? Should I turn the fan off? Should I keep the fan on? And would the fan on help? Would it be helpful to have the air moving? Would it be helpful to have the heat in here? I don't know. Do I like it hot? Is it better to meditate cold? I'm curious about that. I wonder what my teachers would say if I asked them that. If I were to, and then you start going on this train of thought. You hop this train and it's just picking up speed as it barrels through life. And here you are, still sitting on your pillow, just trying to breathe and be. And if I didn't have a practice of coming back, it's not about knowing better. It's not about having, a deeper understanding. It's just about having a practice of remembering to come back. It's just practicing it over and over. If I didn't have that practice, I could get stuck in those thoughts and then I could sit for 20 minutes, but my mind is taking me everywhere but here, anytime but now. And when we get stuck in those traps, those places of busyness in the mind, it's those times that we often feel the most useful, the most productive, the most fulfilled as the identity of who I am. And so we develop these things like the phones and the scrolling, and we develop the ability to have multiple tabs open on our computers and our phones, and our TVs are on, and we have all of these things happening to take us here. Well, I can do this, but when I'm doing this, I want to hear John Coltrane. And when I'm hearing John Coltrane, I'd really love it if I had a cup of tea. And if I have a cup of tea, I may as well light the candle to keep the tea warm. And if I'm lighting the candle, there's some incense. I'll light the incense. And now I'm all of these places. Should I do this? Should I do that? And my mind is just loving it, because it's getting full attention. It's getting full attention and full workout. And then I'm just making everything just so. Everything is just perfect. Or everything is a mess. Everything is a catastrophe. Everything is crumbling around me. And then the panic sets in and the anxiety. And there I am. It's the exact same function. I'm sitting in my bed or on my cushion or in my chair, and my mind is creating for my body this perfect recipe for how I'm going to be in that moment, how I'm going to be. Am I going to be calm, satiated, relaxed? I've got that monk's joy of having my tea and Coltrane's playing and the scent of the incense, and how could this be more perfect? That's what my mind keeps asking. Yeah, but how could this be more perfect? Or I've got the total body chaos of panic. How could anything else make this worse? There it is. How can we make this a little worse? There that is. And then, you start arguing with your partner, or you become irritable, you start to make yourself actually physically ill. All of these things start to occur. And this is the same processes. This is the busyness of the mind. And I wasn't really thinking about that this morning too much until I started listening to a teacher, Brother Phap. He's the abbot of Plum Village, which is the monastery that was founded by Thich Nhat Hanh, one of my favorite teachers of all time. And Brother Phap was talking about how this even happens to him, that this feeling of overwhelm, this feeling of um, simultaneously needing to do everything and not being enough. It happens even to him. So as I'm sitting with that, I'm listening to this, I find I found comfort in that, but I also found like, well, what are we doing? What is the function that we're doing that is creating this deeper, more complicated form of suffering? You know, and so I thought, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit with this for a while. I'm going to see what comes up for me, and then I forgot about it. I moved through my day, and I'm driving to work. I'm driving in, and I'm going really slow. Uh, for some reason, I just wanted to relish the experience of not being in a rush. I knew I was still going to be kind of scraping by on time, but I was, it's okay. I'm going to drive nice and slow. So I'm going down my road nice and slow, and my mind starts to congratulate me on this. Like, congratulations, 15 miles an hour. Yeah, you're doing great. Boy, aren't the neighbors going to be happy when you get to the end of the road and they're waiting for the bus and they see how slow you're driving. They're going to feel so seen and cherished. And then I round the corner and there's no neighbors there. Oh, okay. No one to uh, experience my benevolent grace. And then I'm driving on the main roads, and I'm still keeping this nice slow pace. Um, and as I start coming down Rockydale, a road that I take to get into work, I'm just really experiencing the fog and the beauty of the morning, and it's a lovely, lovely drive. I don't even have music or anything playing in the stereo, just silence. I'm driving, just being. And this truck comes up behind me really quickly and passes me. And there's plenty of room for the truck to pass. And the truck passes me and it just speeds on by and it goes past. And in that moment, boom, there it was. I am struck with the awareness that I might be going too slow, that I might be in the way, that this guy's going faster. I should be going faster. Why am I not going faster? Do I want to go faster? Am I impeding traffic? Oh man, who does that? Is that guy a maniac? Look at that maniac. How fast do you have to go? Lord, man. Well, it's foggy. Gosh, I hope I don't round the corner and see him in a fiery inferno. All of a sudden, all of the thoughts and the insecurities just barrel in, and I become really busy in my mind. I become really busy. I start thinking about that person, and I start thinking about, you know, what effect I'm having on them, and you know, they just are driving to work, and I was moving slower than they needed to go, so they passed me. It was not a big deal at all, but this is how the busyness of the mind works. It starts to create complicated layers of problems and solutions. Meanwhile, I'm still moving at the same pace. And I have this fear almost that's coming over me. Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing this correctly? Why is my mind racing? Why am I like this? Why am I such a mess? And there it is. I've already full blown entered into suffering. And so I reach down and I'm in cruise control and I just add 2 miles per hour to my speed. So now it's all fixed. It's all better. 2 miles per hour. Now we're all satiated. We're all good. Everything is fine. But it clicked in that moment as I was doing that. I started laughing at myself while I'm driving because I recognized what it was. I recognized what the busyness is. And the busyness is just this function of survival of a way of being that I've accustomed myself to. It's a way of being. And when I say a way of being, I mean it's a way of behaving. It's a set of behaviors that I have accustomed myself to avoid being present with who I am and what I'm feeling deeply in moments of silence and moments of quiet. Um, and as I was listening to that monk, that he's a venerated monk, he's been a monk since he started studying with Thich Nhat Hanh full time. He moved to the monastery at age 13. Uh, he he was Thich Nhat Hanh's helper, assistant, and upon his death, he was named the abbot of the place. He's got a lot of responsibility, but even he, as this trained and practiced monk, still was coming to understand that we busy ourselves with all of these external things and can convince ourselves really easily that we're doing the right thing because what we're doing is good. Okay, sure. But if what we're doing, no matter how good it is coming at the detriment of who we are, then we have a very limited resource of goodness before it becomes resentment, before it becomes detachment, before it becomes dissociation, before it becomes now this goodness that I need to get away from. I need to escape because the goodness is no longer a product of just being present, which it at one time is, and sometimes it is. But even those things, they aren't benevolent if we're still allowing ourselves to drop into this busyness. And even if it seems unintentional, we are avoiding ourselves, our own suffering. And, I see a lot of people talk about this as sort of a gateway into the opposite of being of service. They start to become closed off. I'm tending to myself. I need to tend to myself. Well, that's the same game. That's the same game. Because it all comes from this notion of being the fixer and fixing something. And what I think that I'm beginning to understand about busyness is the only way to balance my busyness is with stillness. And that doesn't require really changing much of any of the ways that I'm being in the world, the ways that I'm behaving. It has to change the ways that I either accept what I'm doing or not. That's pretty much it. If I can accept in that moment what I am doing right now is avoiding my suffering, then I have the opportunity to allow the suffering in and be present with it in that space and in that time. And it's just really luscious when you can find that place and lock in and snap, and you're there. You're home and you belong. But when we are externalizing so much, fixing this person, fixing that person, helping this person, pleasing this person, doing all of this, um, we aren't including ourselves in the equation. Now we're helping, right? We're helping. We're doing this thing out there, but not in here. I'm not a part of that. We're not slowing down just enough to include myself in how that works. I think about this with telehealth. Um, I'll just share this one last thing, and then we'll move forward. Um, I've been recently, and I'll open more about this as time goes on, but I've recently been taking a supplement as medicine prescribed by a doctor, trying to sort of figure out the imbalances that are going on in my blood and in my body, and why I don't have all systems functioning uh, ideally. Just that's a nice way to say I don't know why I'm so fucked up all the time, but but we're figuring this out. And so I begin this regimen. It's a weekly regimen, and it's an injection regimen. And I'm doing this thing, and I'm dealing with the nerves and the anxiety of injections because of my history with those things. And at first, I start to feel great. I'm like, oh wow, this is it. This is what I've been missing. And then a few days go by, and then it's crash. Oh, this is terrible. And then I take my next injection, and it's like, okay, there it is. We're getting there. And then it's crash. And then a few weeks of this go by, and I notice that my crash is deeper and more sustained now than it is before. And then I notice that even when I take the supplement, I don't really have as much of a lift, but I still have a deeper crash. And my body's kind of doing these, you know, loop-de-loops. Feels like I have a consistent flu for the past couple of weeks. And I've taken all the tests. I don't have any flus. And then some days there'll be an hour where I feel great. I feel fantastic. And then it crashes again. And it's causing my mind to kind of go into this chaotic space of worry and fear of what's going to happen if I start to commit to something and then my body crashes out. And so I start having these deep beliefs of not being enough arise, and these fears and these feelings and insecurities and all of these things. And I'm just preoccupied. I was at a reading of two really phenomenal poets this last weekend up in Portland at the book fair. And I was finding I couldn't hear more than 2 or 3 words without my mind starting to dissociate. And I had to keep bringing myself back to be present. I'm like, no, you want to be here. You want to hear these poets. These poets are gifting you amazing insight right now. Just listen, just listen, just listen. And then my mind just takes me out of it. And I was like, man, this is awful. So I start looking on the internet for other people who have this shared experience. And I find some Reddit threads of people who also experienced these like really drastic side effects when beginning this regimen. And it's not supposed to do this. This isn't the intention of the medication, right? And you talk to a doctor and they'll tell you, no, this has nothing to do with this. And this is the experience of dozens upon dozens upon dozens of people that I'm reading these threads. And one person says, I experienced this for a number of months. And then what I started to understand was this is actually what happens when your body starts to receive something it hasn't had for so long. It goes into repair, and it creates a lot of pain and suffering in that process. This is your body readjusting. This is your body healing, and it's messy and it's ugly and it doesn't feel very good. But it's because you've been functioning on this deficit for so long. There are parts of your body that have forgotten how to do this. And now it's doing it, but it's going to take some time, and you'll come out on the other end. And then I found more people saying that. And I really, really resonated with that experience because I've done that. I've done that. I've done that not with, injection medications, but I've done that with my breathing practice. Healing is not always instantly feeling better. It's not always pleasure and joy, and it's not always balance right away. Sometimes balance is a pendulum and it swings us back and forth, back and forth. And the suffering is the busyness of the mind. As soon as something comes up, the mind takes us away someplace else, someplace else, someplace else. And I started noticing that, and I thinking about, like, how busy do you make your life doing good? And what's the difference? And I can't find it. I can't find it. But I found what seems to be what is being asked of me. When the busyness comes, stillness is required. It's just required of us. Let's invite the bell for a few breaths. If I can remember where I placed the mallet. I'm breathing in and out. Find your breath, find your rhythm. Yeah, the stillness. Lovely. Quite lovely. I'm not sure what number we are on when it comes to our I think we're on number 45 because I'm reading 44 right now, and I think I remember working through this one. So we'll just go to 45 today. This is Bell Hook's Appalachian Elegy, number 45. Barren, broken hill, once a place of possibility, now only remnants, old glory gone. Heritage sullied with hate, ancestors indigenous and dark held captive by soldiers and greed, by bloody conquest. Battlefields where the dead live, unclaimed, not mourned, histories buried, forgotten, lost to a world of cover ups. Ghosts return to these hills to grieve, cry out lamentations, mourning the desecration of earthbound bodies. Ghosts gather here, make promises of resurrection and return. Ghosts gather here, make promises of resurrections and return. It's clear that on one level, um, Bell Hooks is talking about the history of the place that of which she writes, Appalachia, in this time and in this place in these hills. She's talking about, she grew up in Kentucky, in the Appalachian hills of Kentucky, and she's talking about the genocide of indigenous peoples, the enslavement and cruelty inflicted upon African peoples. She's talking about, these battlegrounds of the Civil War and all these histories, not just history. Like it's clear she says histories, the multitude, the multiplicity, histories buried, forgotten, lost to a world of cover-ups. It's all these, each of these people, each of these experiences, each of these times and places, these are histories, multiple histories. And it's hard for me to want to really take this beyond what she's talking about in a literal sense, because that's really important. But also, she's a poet, and she's talking also about this thing that occurs with our own ghosts, our own shame, our own fear, our own suffering, our own regrets. Ghosts return to these hills to grieve, cry out lamentations, mourning the desecration of earthbound bodies. I just can't help but think about that as being these parts of myself, these parts of each of us that come back to these old wounds, these old scars in the landscape of our being. These ghosts gather here, make promises of resurrection and return. We've talked about the teaching of the hungry ghost recently, but this notion of a ghost itself, these specters, these things that, like a revenant, these things that return, that come back. I think that this is the healing. I think when these ghosts return, it's the opportunity for amends. It's the opportunity for alms, for peace, for listening, for understanding, for hearing, for maybe the first time, these lamentations, this grieving. And maybe that's what's existing behind the busyness of the mind to take us out of all these things, is maybe there's a ghost in the room that's just asking to be seen and heard, and the mind creates clatter. That's the cover-ups that Bell Hooks is talking about, the clatter of our minds, the incessant chattering, all of it. So thank you, Bell Hooks, and thank you to each of you. Thanks for being here and doing this work. Reach out, leave messages, leave comments. I'd like to hear your perspective. I want to hear what busyness is like for you in your mind and in your body. And when you catch yourself overloading your schedules, both in the physical world and the mental schedules that we keep, Do you ever stop to wonder why it is you're doing that? How is that busyness, the lack of a kindness to yourself, that lack of presence with the self and wanting to be with the quiet suffering of the self? Do you ever question what it is that's driving your busyness? And when you do question it, what is the answer that you come to? What is your driving factor? I'm sure that there are many of us who share multiple driving factors for why we keep ourselves so occupied. Occupied, occupation. That's a language of colonization. It's interesting, that isn't it? Colonization is a practice of extraction, containment, and extraction. So, what's being extracted from ourselves? What's being sucked out of the earth, of our mind, our body, our spirit? These are good questions, and they're valid and they're valuable, and they are the pathways that keep us on a path of health and wellness and togetherness, more importantly than any of those things. If we're together, we are okay. Thanks, friends. I hope to be back tomorrow.